We're pleased this afternoon to have as our commencement speaker the Right Honorable Dr. Ralph E. Gonsalves, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Mr. Prime Minister, we are delighted that you can take the time from your busy schedule to be with us today. And we want to welcome you to Trinidad and to the University of the Southern Caribbean. Ralph Everett Gonsalves was born August 8, 1946, to Alban Gonsalves and Teresa Francis in Connery, a rural village in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He's married to Eloise Gonsalves, née Harris, and has 3 sons, Camilo, Adam, and Storm, and 2 daughters, Isis and Soleil. Dr. Gonsalves was educated in St. Vincent and the Grenadines at the Connery Roman Catholic School and at the St. Vincent Boys Grammar School. He later completed a bachelor's degree in economics at the University of the West Indies, there obtaining several noteworthy accolades, including President of the Deep Baton Society, President of the Guild of Undergraduates in Guild of Undergraduates. In 1971, he obtained a master's in government from the University of the West Indies. In 1974 and 1981, he completed a PhD in government and a degree of Utter Barrister at the University of Manchester, England, and Gray's Inn, London, respectively. Dr. Gonsalves became the deputy political leader of the United Labour Party in 1994. The ULP is a merger of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Labour Party and a movement for national unity, a political party which at the time of the merger, Dr. Gonsalves was the leader. They won the St. Vincent and the Grenadines general elections held in March 2001. At the time of the election, Dr. Gonsalves had been elected to political leader of the ULP and became the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines on that date. He has remained Prime Minister of St. Vincent since that time, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, winning elections again in December 2005 and in December 2010. Dr. Gonsalves is a lawyer by profession, and up to the time that he became Prime Minister, served in that capacity, practicing law extensively and successfully before the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court in a wide range of matters, but particularly in the fields of constitutional law, administrative law, matrimonial law, real property law, law of tort generally, and the law of contract. Dr. Gonsalves has researched, written, and published extensively on a range of matters touching upon the Caribbean, African trade unionism, comparative political economy, and developmental issues generally. Among his latest publications are History and the Future, A Caribbean Perspective, The Politics of Our Caribbean Civilization, Essays and Speeches, The Making of the Comrade, The Political Journey of Ralph Gonsalves, and Diary of a Prime Minister, 10 Days Among Benedictine Monks. Ladies and gentlemen, all of us, let us join our hands in applause and welcome to the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Dr. Kern Tobias, Chairman of the Board of Trustees, the University of the Southern Caribbean, and Mrs. Tobias. Dr. Clinton Valley, President of the University of the Southern Caribbean, and Mrs. Valley. Justice Ralston Nelson of the CCJ and Mrs. Nelson. Members of the Diplomatic Corps, representatives from the judiciary and from the University Board of Directors and from other tertiary institutions, university vice presidents and directors, faculty, staff, alumni, graduates, members of the media, other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I want first of all to thank the University of the Southern Caribbean for having me here. Of course, I was welcomed to Trinidad by your distinguished president, but I am actually entitled to citizenship of Trinidad and Tobago on the basis of the fact that my mother is a born Trinidadian and so too is my dear wife. And wherever I turn in my government, we have a lot of Trinis. I'm very pleased to be here also because of the importance of this institution and its predecessor to Caribbean integration. And I've been asked to highlight 3 graduates who were among the earlier students from before the Second World War, or thereabouts. Bertram Straker, who is the father of Sir Louis Straker, our immediate past Deputy Prime Minister in my country. Evans Morgan, who was the first graduate from this university to be a member of the legislature in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And a gentleman from my constituency, whom I believe that Trinidad and Tobago seeks to claim, Titi Bilinji. So, I am here with you, and I recite the antecedents to make you feel a part of me, and I of you. The young men and women who are graduating today at this university have successfully climbed one important ladder, tertiary education, in their continuing journey of life. You have received a quality education from a prestigious Caribbean university with internationalist linkages and universal standards of achievement. I feel sure that the purpose of this education which you have received has been fourfold: to train critical minds in the receiving and transmitting of universal culture, including science and technology, but with a Caribbean particularity; to equip you with the requisite skills for modern living and production; to inculcate and strengthen in you the uplifting, tried and tested values of our Caribbean civilization, including those taught in the Holy Book, and to empower you beyond mere certification. Thus, over your years of study here, one reasonably expects that you have had a profound enhancement of your critical thinking, an upgrading of your skills for life and modern production enterprises in the region and globally. a strengthening of a solid core of values grounded in divinity, humanism, and Caribbeanness, and empowering you as a human being, not as an atomized individual, but as a many-sided person in an ennobling collective. I have heard and read enough commencement addresses in which the speakers seek to say something new in their exhortations to you. I confessed at the beginning that I have nothing new nor original to tell you. But in my retelling of well-traversed themes and ideas, I may spark something anew in you or to fortify what you already know. So I begin with the learning handed down to us by the God of Jacob through the mouth of Balaam in the book of Numbers. I believe that you are familiar with the context and the text of the oracle uttered by Balaam in Numbers, specifically chapter 23 and verses 7 to 10. Balak brought me from Aram, the king of Moab, from the eastern mountains. Come, he said, curse Jacob for me. Come, denounce Israel. How can I curse those whom God has not cursed? How can I denounce those whom the Lord has not denounced? From the rocky peaks, I see them. From the heights, I view them. I see a people who live apart and do not consider themselves one of the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob or number the fourth part of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and may my end be like theirs. From the lofty peak of a university degree, from your heights of academic success, you are viewing much around you. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? What indeed do you taste? And what do you smell? What do your five senses tell you? What do you transmit to us from the composite learning of your senses? What are you going to do individually and collectively to assist in making a change for the better? A lot of people make change, you know. But it doesn't mean that change is for the better. You have to make it for the better. And at the conclusion of it all, there is the enduring quest. Let me die the death of the righteous, and may my end be like theirs. Over the past few years, you, so brimful of promise, have been oft told that you are leaders in the making. But first, you ought to appreciate and experience what it is to be a follower. In following, with careful judgment, humility, and dedicated work, you are preparing yourself to be a wise, thoughtful, and committed leader. In my reading of history, I have been most impressed by the accomplishments of many leaders upon whom the designation great has been universally bestowed. This is especially so in the case of those who have achieved greatness at a young age, at your age. Alexander the Great, at the age of 22 years, had crossed the Ilissus, razed the city of Thebes to the ground, and brought the entire Persian Empire under his sway. At 23 years old, Descartes evolved a new system of philosophy. At the age of 24 years, William Pitt was Prime Minister of Britain. At 25 years, Napoleon Bonaparte saved the French Republic with devoted men, guns, and swords on the streets of Paris. And shortly after his 26th birthday, John Keats penned his majestic poem, Ode to a Nightingale. So never mind your youth. There are possibilities there for you. But remember, I begin by saying you have to learn to follow. And you have to recognize the importance of wilderness years. In the Holy Bible and in the revered books of other religions, exceptional leaders have been prominent. Abraham, Moses, Joshua, Jacob, Job, Nehemiah, Paul, and the incomparable Jesus Christ. For our purposes today, I single out, however, Issachar and Daniel for emulation. Issachar is perhaps one of the least celebrated of the leaders of the 12 tribes of Israel. I want to ask you, you read the Bible a lot. You know about Issachar? You got to read Chronicles. Issachar. The book of Chronicles instructs us in something of defining importance. Simply put, Issachar knew the times. So, you must know and understand deeply the times in which we live. The shaping of these times through the fever of history, and be possessed of a well-grounded perspective of the future, which of all times is the only time which we can ever desecrate. Remember this. You know it, but sometimes people forget it. Of all time, only the future is ours to desecrate. The present is the past, and the past is full of possibilities and limitations for the future. Daniel, who lived in the period of Babylonian exile in the 6th century before Christ, became an outstanding leader under a Babylonian king. Daniel, at an early age, was selected for training at the court of one of these kings. We are told in the book of Daniel that he was one of 4 young men in training whom God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning, in pretty much the same thing that you have been getting at the USC. And Daniel could fathom visions and dreams of all sorts. Daniel was thus educated with abundant technical skills, but he had a solid grounding in the God of Israel. In time, a successor king, Darius, was pleased to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout his kingdom with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. I want you to listen to something of profound importance from the Bible. Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. Well, that is when Daniel's troubles began. His rivals, and you will have, they were determined to cut him down, so you have to be conscious of that. But in his handling of governmental affairs, his critics could find no basis to complain or to seek to depose him. They could find no corruption in him. He was trustworthy, and he was not negligent. Still, though, his political and administrative enemies wanted to remove him for their own selfish reasons. Thus, they manufacture the basis upon which to attempt to chop him down to size, to use the language of our streets. So you must be aware that those forces are there. Not for you to trample on those who want to cut you down, but to have enough wisdom how to maneuver yourself to get to goodness and nobility. We have a host of lessons here for all of us to learn from this moment in history. Most of all, I wanted to grasp that Daniel was disciplined in his training. He worked hard and smart. He acquired tremendous practical skills in governance. He was trustworthy and incorruptible. And he rested all of this on the foundation of his faith and his beliefs. In short, he possessed exceptional qualities. These qualities he displayed not by himself, but in communion with others, under his God's remit, and that's why he triumphed. Most, if not all of you, are likely to be in leadership positions of one kind or another. Now, this young man you see before you, I have been a political activist for 45 years. So I know I have the wilderness experience. I've been a parliamentarian for some 20 years and prime minister for 12 and continuing. So I want those of you brimful of promise, and you're going to follow, but you're also going to aspire to positions of leadership in whatever area. There are three things I want to tell you up front about leadership. First, as we say in the Roman Catholic Church, once you sing in the choir, you can be pope. So once you're in the business, you can get there. That's the first point. So don't let anybody tell you it can't be done. Once you sing in the choir, you can be pope. The ambition which is contained in this proposition, however, is in the second place restrained by a beautiful hymn which counsels that the good Lord shows his face on he who waits his turn. So though you can be pope, you can't be pope right away. You had to wait, and the good Lord must show his face, and your turn will come. And thirdly, very important, I want you to listen to this young man who has been around for quite a long while. While it is the obligation of a leader to inspire his followers, a far greater leadership value is the capacity to draw out of those whom you are leading, that which is good and noble, and oftentimes to draw out of them goodness and nobility which they, the followers, do not as yet know that they possess. So to put in is important, but to draw out is the greatest hallmark of leadership. To draw out of people that which is good and noble in them, and often to draw out of them goodness and nobility which they do not as yet know that they possess, which means you got to lead from the front. You listen to people, but you don't lead on the basis of opinion polls. You lead on the basis of certain enduring truths. The prophet builder Nehemiah drew out of his people extraordinary virtues and qualities as he led them in rebuilding the city wall around Jerusalem, which had been broken for 112 years. Remember though, what I told you in the case of Daniel, those who wanted to cut him down. Just as in the case of Nehemiah, so too in your case, there will be modern-day Sanballats and Tobias of the Ammonites who would oppose your rebuilding, oppose your renewal, oppose your transformation of things for the better. And they will use a lot of things to derail you, and you must watch out for them. Mockery, insults, anger, conspiracy, and deception. They will use those things. I will tell you, I don't worry about those things. I keep on doing what I have to do. And if the people are not satisfied, they will vote me out. But I know this, that he who fears the loss of power tends to lose it swiftly. And he who fears not tends to hold it longer. This is why newspaper headlines must not rule you. You lead in accordance with your conscience, what you believe to be right, and put the case. Whether you're working in a school, in an administrative setting, in a business, or in politics, wherever you are, I want you to bear these things in mind. You may reject them and say, those are the rantings of an old man. But I come here to give you the benefit of my wilderness years. Always remember that for your leadership to flourish, all the historical circumstances must be propitious. You act not in a vacuum. C.L.R. James, a Trinidadian, arguably the finest Caribbean intellectual of the 21st century, of the 20th century, sorry. As you know, he wrote this book called The Black Jacobins, about the Haitian Revolution and its leader, Toussaint Louverture. And C.L.R. James said this: great men make history, but only such history as it is possible to make. Their freedom of achievement is limited by the necessities of their environment. There are a lot of people who want to achieve things which are not possible to be achieved in the existing environment. So you have to know your times. That's why I took you to Issachar. And when you are making the change for the better, remember you have enemies like Daniel and like Nehemiah, and watch out for the modern-day Sanballat and Tobias of the Ammonites. So bear in mind always that though men make their own history, they do not make it just as they please. They do not make it under circumstances chosen by themselves, but under circumstances directly encountered, given, and transmitted from the past. This University of the Southern Caribbean and its predecessor, Caribbean Union College, CUC, have provided our region and the world with outstanding graduates. Thus, it was odd that prior to my election to the office of Prime Minister in St. Vincent and the Grenadines on March 28, 2001, the CUC graduates were subject to discriminatory treatment. Your degrees, your qualifications were not viewed as comparable, for example, to those of the University of the West Indies. Accordingly, The remuneration was less, and professional advancement retarded. You couldn't get study leave to come to CUC. You couldn't get financial assistance. Even though inside of several governments prior to my time, you had a lot of Seventh-day Adventists in government. But they were not in a position to make the change. I change all of it with the stroke of a pen. I hold your graduates in such high esteem that I insist on the recruitment of those whom you train, for instance, as pastors, and who for one reason or another opt for public service in the state administration. I insist that they be recruited. Your trained pastors occupy, for example, consular positions in our diplomatic missions overseas. And at home, they are employed as counselors and in special units or departments such as those dealing with subjects such as HIV and AIDS. And I am satisfied, broadly speaking, the best pastors that I hear in church are educated by this place. And I am a Roman Catholic. Your university and the Seventh-day Adventist faith draw out the special qualities resident in our young people. No wonder across the Caribbean, the fastest growing religious denomination is that which undergirds your university. I applaud you most sincerely. I am most impressed with your motto. Quote, "The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled," unquote. The philosophy expressed here rejects the banking concept of education, so scorned by the Brazilian educator Paulo Freire in his book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. A student is not a banking institution in which the teacher makes deposits and from which the student or the teacher withdraws sums by way of regurgitation. Critical thinking is at your institution's core, reflective of the premise that the mind is a terrible thing to waste. Your motto is thus tied inextricably with your university's aim. Enlighten minds, empower people, embrace opportunities. I am so happy that you have asked me to be here with you on your 80th graduation exercise. In the years ahead, you who are graduating would face setbacks. But always, we must turn setbacks into advances, limitations into possibilities. You would surely be tested severely in many ways. But I feel sure that with your training and faith, you are likely to pass the test with your integrity not compromised. We have examples before us to follow. And even if we sometimes stumble and fall, we must get up and endeavor to do right. There are splendid exemplary figures to guide us. Joseph, who spurned the advances of Potiphar's wife. Daniel, who refused to eat forbidden food in the court of King Nebuchadnezzar. And the extraordinary case of God commanding Abraham to offer his only son as a sacrifice. Undoubtedly, at times, when the challenges and despair seem insurmountable, know well that bad things do happen to good people. In this regard, a helpful advisor is the Rabbi Laureate Harold Kushner, who has written a book entitled The Book of Job, When Bad Things Happened to a Good Person. I am confident that you will triumph against any adversity. The virtue of self-mastery is engendered in you in communion with God. As you climb the ladder of success, remember always those who are less fortunate than you are. The poor, the marginalized, the sick, the outcast, the children, the adults, and the children with special needs, among others. The psalmist teaches, "Blessed is he who has regard for the weak. The Lord delivers him in times of trouble. The Lord will protect him and preserve his life. He will bless him in the land and not surrender him to the desire of his foes." Across our region, our peoples have made significant material and technological progress over the last 40 or so years. But there have sadly been some troubling antisocial trends. Wanton violence against others in our community, a coarsening of language and conduct, falsehoods as the currency of exchange between persons, and an overemphasis of leisure, pleasure, and nice time. We must affirm from the rocky heights that no progressive society has ever been built without a focus on disciplined, smart, productive work. Leisure, pleasure, and nice time as a way of life engender laziness, which is an absence of virtue. It induces mendicancy and encourages a trespass to other people's property and resources, since leisure, pleasure, and nice time have to be financed by someone who produces wealth. A man who is on the block who tells you that he can't go and work for $100 TT a day because you want 150. But that is the same man who want to take a holiday to St. Vincent. Or you can take a holiday when you're working. They want the finest things, no problem with that. They love pleasure, leisure, and nice time. But somebody has to pay for the leisure, pleasure, and nice time. And a progressive society must have work, hard and smart work, at its core. And that is why you have come here for an education, to equip you to work hard and smart, to be productive, based on a set of core values, tried and tested, for yourself, your family, your community, and your nation. That is what this business is about. I know what is going through some of your heads, that this is a strange politician. Politicians don't talk about against leisure, pleasure, and nice time. Because a lot of politicians have learned since the time of Caesar that the mass of people love leisure, pleasure, and nice time. Sport and carnival. Rum and wine down. Well, I'm not telling you not to do any of that, you know. That's your business. What I'm telling you, you have to do, you have to work hard and smart, because you ain't going to go and thief anybody things to get your leisure, pleasure, and nice time because the police come in for you. And I speak that truth. And I've been elected on 3 successive occasions to be the Prime Minister of the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And if they don't like it, well, they could always send me to do something else. I wasn't born with this job. I have other things to do with my life. But once I'm doing it, I got to do it my way. And you got to do it your way. No government, no election manifesto, no bundle of political promises could move a country forward if we do not emphasize the progressive essence of hard, smart, disciplined, productive work. You are graduating. I want you to take this piece of advice to heart and proclaim it everywhere you go, even in communities where people who don't want to hear it said. I have been informed by the Office of the President of your university that the text for the day is Psalm 37. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Well, in the same Psalm 37, you go down a little further, and this is what you find. If the Lord delights in a man's way, he makes his steps firm. Though he stumble, he will not fall. For the Lord upholds him with his hand. I was young, and now I am old. Yet I have never seen the righteous forsaken, or their children begging bread. I reiterate my congratulations to you, the graduating class. You have been in the valley of challenges, and you have arrived at the heights of success. I say all the best to you, your family, and your friends. I shall remember you always with love and caring. And when you make a lot of money here in Trinidad, come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and spend some. Thank you very much.